Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our conversation today with Jenny Floros. This is going to be great. We're going to talk a little bit about just the role of customer success, how it's evolved over time, and generally some advice or insight that Jenny has around building a customer-centric team. So just a little bit about Jenny. Jenny has 3 decades of experience in building high-performing teams in sales, account management, and customer success. I'm very, very curious, like what all those things mean. I know at different companies they define them differently, so very excited to dig into that. She went from being the first female regional VP of sales at Groupon, which is one of the fastest growing tech companies, to the founder of Advance Forward Consulting, which was recently launched, which is really exciting. Her mission is to develop individuals into highly effective leaders through intentional skill development. And from my conversation with other customer success folks, I feel like there are a lot of skills that are required. So yeah, thank you so much, Jenny, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Breena. I'm
Yeah.
excited to have the conversation.
Yeah. So let's just start off with telling us a little bit about your career journey.
Absolutely. Yes. 3 decades, right?
Yeah.
You wonder, do you say 30 years? Do you say 3 decades? Exactly. How do you best define that?
Yeah.
Uh, it's been an amazing journey. I think about it in chapters. So the
Okay.
first chapter of my career, which was about 15 years, was in live entertainment ticketing. I worked for venues, promoters. I was with Ticketmaster for a decade. So very exciting time of my life. And then the second chapter of my career was in tech. And I entered the tech space, which has been equally as exciting and quite the adrenaline rush. That seems to be the trend. And now I've entered my third chapter, which is starting my own business, consulting on leadership development for mid-level management. So yeah, it's been quite a career so far.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. Well, when you are thinking about those 3 chapters, what did those transitions look like in between that? It might be like a very large question to ask, but I am always curious, what propelled, maybe we start from like between chapter 1 and 2, what did that transition look like?
Yeah, it was a very interesting time, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that chapter, when I transitioned, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
into chapter 1 and 2, it was back in 2008 when the economy had collapsed
Mm,
and LinkedIn had just hit. So the only way to get a job truly was through LinkedIn.
mm-hmm.
How to get a job, how to interview, everything had changed. So the tech era started to explode. So it was a learning curve a little bit
Mm-hmm.
after being with a company and in an industry for 15 something years.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really trying to understand, okay, how do I take my skills in this space of entertainment and apply it into the world of tech.
Mm-hmm.
And there was so much hype and excitement during
Mm,
that time. So I knew that it was exactly the space that I wanted to be in.
mm-hmm.
And I felt like I had a lot of value to bring it because you know, tech, as skews very young. So people coming right out of college, going right into these
Sure.
sales opportunities and, coming into this space with some seasoned experience in leadership and developing sales teams and career development for individuals. It was a really good partnership. It was just a really great time to get into that world.
What were some of the skills that you had to develop when you moved into tech? So, I know things move very quickly in this space. And I'm curious, what were some of those things that obviously you had a lot of experience and knowledge on leadership building and just like experience in general that you could bring and offer. But I am curious, what did that learning curve look like for you?
It was the pace, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like in the entertainment industry, the adrenaline rush was there, but the pace was a
Mm-hmm.
little different. Now we entered an era of technology where everything was at your fingertips, right? You had
Mm,
social media, you know, everything, you had Google. I mean,
mhm,
everything was at your fingertips, and the expectation of urgency, the definition of urgency changed.
mhm,
So I had to learn how to be successful and how to manage priorities and people in a way that mirrored that pace.
mhm.
So, you know, we didn't go from, you know, we needed to fill a theater up in the course of a, you know, 3 months. It went to, okay, like, here are your sales goals for the week and the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Wow.
it
Yeah.
was it was just a different pace, an exciting pace, but everything happened quickly and the expectations were much higher.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the beginning of that chapter two. So you're in the tech space, you're managing a team, and what did that evolution look like as far as team growth and what you were really learning over that time, even just like at a thematic sort of high level?
Yeah, you know, it started with, you know, the evolution. I think, you know, we kind of touched a little bit about, you know, sales, account management, customer
Mm-hmm.
success. I specifically say that because it really was an evolution, right? In the very beginning of my tech career, if you will, you know, sales was defined by doing everything. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
did new business, you did retention business, you did some account management. And so it was kind of an all-in-one role. And
Mm-hmm.
then as, you know, time went on and the climate and the client need and the customer need, you know, other roles started to emerge, right? So
Mm-hmm.
then we started talking hunter farmer. Then we started. It was a focus that started to crystallize, like
Mm-hmm.
making teams focus strictly on new business, creating teams that was strictly focused on retention business, and
Mm-hmm.
bringing you know, added value in creating a longer life cycle of that customer or merchant or client, however a company defines it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, comes the customer success component, which is, you know, as you grow, how are we servicing those customers? You know,
Mm-hmm.
they're troubleshooting, they're making sure that customers are satisfied, you know,
Mm-hmm.
so it became, you know, as you evolved, it evolved from, you know, sales, retention, customer satisfaction, and then different roles emerged in order to deliver on that. So
Mm-hmm.
over the course of time, you know, we, you know, I think everybody's, you know, these titles started to emerge, these business units started to emerge, and it really was defined very uniquely based on the organization and, you know, what their mission was and what they were looking to accomplish.
Sure. Yeah. I had this like as you were talking, this visual of like this single cellular structure that has all these components in it. You know, you start small and then it's like you start to multiply and it's like bloop, 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 like all these different roles are emerging. And I imagine a lot of people who are listening to this can relate to that rapid growth and the challenges that come with, you know, wearing all the hats, wearing all like carrying all the responsibility within you. And while that might be burdensome, you at least have some sort of visibility and control over those things. How how did you manage how did you manage the sort of like rapid growth, the new titles, the new roles, and maintaining stability and maintaining that, you know, that quality of relationship and service that you have for your customers as you grew? What were some things that you implemented or even just learned from
Sure.
that? Yeah.
Lots of trial and error.
Yeah.
Lots of trial.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest takeaway from the trial and error for me was you could implement, like when we implemented Hunter Farmer the first time, it was not successful. Like we implemented Hunter Farmer the second time, it was not successful.
Mm.
When we implemented it the third time, it was extremely successful.
Oh, okay.
And
Third
so,
time's the charm for sure.
and I think, you know, throughout my experience, you know, the key is you could, if you truly believe that the the approach or the structure is the right structure, but the deliverables aren't quite there. Learn from those mistakes. You know, what you do, as long as the second time you try, the third time you try, you try it by applying the learnings, right? What did you learn from the previous situation? And if we truly believe that this is the structure, let's make sure that we're better at implementing it and executing it. You know, I think the biggest takeaway with the success of the third time is the charm was the bringing all departments together, you know, really cross everybody had a seat at the table, that was a stakeholder in order for that structure to be successful. And that was the key to the success, is making sure everyone's point of view was heard, all the stakeholders were at the table, and that we really implemented it in a way that we made sure that everyone's component, if you will, was understood, and we implemented processes and policies in place to make sure that collaboration was there, and the process of communication was there, and the measurement. So, and we learned how to pivot quickly when things weren't working. So I think that's another, takeaway. Like, it's a trial and error. Anytime you try something new, there's trial and error in it, right? Don't be afraid of it, learn from it, and then pivot, apply the learnings, and keep it moving, and continue to measure against that to ensure success. What's working, what's not working. And really, that's when the sweet spot came. That's when we really were able to develop an organizational structure that worked for the customer, the merchant, in the sense of the company that I work for, and the company itself. So that three-way triangle, it was really important to always stay focused on.
When you speak of that, are you talking about just within your team or within the entire organization?
Within our business unit, and every department that touched the business unit, right?
Okay, gotcha.
So I think whether it was operations, accounting, finance, sales, I think the first couple times sales did it in a vacuum, right? But realizing whatever changes we're making, it has an implication to all parts of the organization. So it's ensuring that your business partners are all have a good understanding and have a voice of how some of this will be implemented.
As far as some of the folks that you either hired as leadership or you worked with in leadership, if someone is listening to this and looking to sort of expand their reach in their company, or wanting to be promoted into some of these roles, what are some of the qualities that you would look for in that leadership position that might vary from an individual contributor role, things that are required to really respond to in the way that you said, sort of this like making sure the structure's there, making sure the implementation of that structure is there? What are some of those qualities that are best suited for a leadership role in that case?
I think really having an open mind and really being able to see things from all points of view is critical. If you are only seeing things from your point of view, because let's break it down. As a sales rep, your path to success is individualized, right? You have to be single focused, individualized, in your focus and achieving that goal. And that's important. And that's how the mindset should be. However, when you start getting into management and leadership, you have to look at things from a broader scope. You have to have different points of view. You have to understand the implications of your actions and and how to lead to bring out the best in people. And you learn very quickly as a successful sales rep that not everyone thinks and functions and applies their strategy the way you do. So how do you instill that drive, and how do you bring out that potential in people? because that's what's going to drive success, is by
Mhm.
unleashing individuals' potential. And that potential varies. There's different paths to success based on the qualities of an individual. And I
Mhm.
think as leaders, as good leaders, your
Mhm.
job is to unleash that potential, right?
Yeah.
And everyone has a different strength, and getting.
Mhm. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about, I mean, on the topic of keeping an open mind, sort of this point of view that different leaders might have. In prepping for this conversation, we talked a little bit about how when you grew a team, you then had to rebrand some of the language around their titles to provide a bit more insight into their value on a team, or really to change the perspective of what they offer. So can you talk to us a little bit about what that looked like?
Absolutely. It was a little controversial because it was a brand that wasn't really well known outside of the company.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I mentioned, we the structure of sales was all encompassing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You did new business, you did retention business, you did some account management.
Mm-hmm.
When we went into the hunter farmer model,
Mm-hmm.
we took really strong salespeople
Mm-hmm.
and put them in a farmer structure,
Mm-hmm.
because that structure and that profile was about, relationship management. It was
Mm-hmm.
about retaining those merchants. It was about, adding value to their relationship with the company, and really being able to continue that full life cycle of that client, customer,
Mm-hmm.
merchant. I say all three because
Yeah.
there's based on the companies. I want you to understand that that means the same thing.
Yeah.
Uh, However, right, we we have to be honest with ourselves that, there's a perception and there's an integrity behind being the salesperson versus
Mm.
the account management person, the
Mm-hmm.
customer success person. And they each had important value that they brought to the company, and they each had very difficult responsibilities. So in an effort to ensure strong collaboration, respect amongst each of those entities, and understanding that a salesperson can't be successful without their account manager, without their customer success person, and vice versa. Like,
Mm-hmm.
everybody really needed to work together
Mm-hmm.
to build that. So in an effort in doing so, we kind of rebranded the titles, if you will, a little bit, so that we kind of created our own brand within the organization to ensure that integrity,
Mm-hmm.
and respect amongst all of our, sales individuals and people who touched the revenue, if you will, of the company. So
Mm-hmm.
it took time. Rebranding things can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. It was
Mm-hmm.
a good thing internally, but I would say it was probably a little challenging for individuals who were looking for jobs outside of the company, because it
Right.
was kind of a well-known title, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to really explain what that was. Um,
Right.
but internally for the company, it delivered what it needed to deliver.
Right. And so the title, what were the titles again? Can you remind me? Sorry.
So business development was
Mm-hmm.
specific to new business.
Mm-hmm.
Merchant development was specific to the retention side of the business.
Got it. Okay.
And then we had the account managers who were very focused on they were more customer success, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
The account managers within our organization at that time were more about customer satisfaction.
I see. I see. Okay. Gotcha. As far as sort of the role and expectations of customer success, whatever the title is, I just came back from the Customer Success Festival, and there were heaps of folks that were talking about, I guess, just like the pressure of reframing your customer success team as a revenue generating team. That was a very hot topic, hot debate.
Mhm.
Some folks were really focused. It was likely dependent on their business, but really focused on keeping them under the service sphere and really maintaining that and focus on the relationship. And then there were folks that were really literally leading sessions on how to turn your customer success team into a revenue generating team. I'm very curious to hear what your thoughts are on that and how you see that evolving in the future as far as like putting that pressure on a CS team, whether that's, the challenges that it might present or some of the opportunities that it might present.
Yeah, great question.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll answer it in a couple different ways from different points of view.
Mm-hmm.
From an organization's point of view, right? It is their job as a company to assess, the organizational structure
Mm-hmm.
and what are the goals, the KPIs of the organization. What are the budgets? They have to achieve a certain level of growth.
Mm-hmm.
How do you best deliver on that growth?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's the outcome that you're looking to achieve. You have to take a step back then and say, okay, what teams do we have?
Mm-hmm.
What skill sets, what
Mm-hmm.
profiles do those teams embody?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we leverage these teams to achieve that growth?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you begin to work backward in this process. And then you realize, I think every company, every organization, especially in today's landscape, has to question their efficiencies. They have to question, are they, delivering the right results? Do they have the right people in the right roles? Do we have the right roles focusing on the right responsibilities? And I think the key is, do we have the right skill set, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think as a company, it is important and you have to have that level of financial responsibility to ask those questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I also think it's important for companies to communicate that with teams. I think it's critical. Sometimes, people will say they want transparency, and I used to always say, listen, transparency comes with a level of responsibility. You have to be able to accept what someone is sharing with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about, I want transparency. It's about, being professional enough to accept what is being shared with you. So I think there's a responsibility from a company perspective to be transparent and for an employee to receive that. And then, from that's the company's point of view. I think from a customer success point of view, right, you have to ask yourself, if the responsibilities of the customer success role is changing and the company is looking for it to become more revenue generating, as long as you understand the reasons why, I think most people can understand that, right? I mean, unless you're nonprofit organizations, corporations are for profit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they have
Exactly.
they have to drive that. So I think that's when you then take the responsibility for yourself to say, hey, do I have some skills that are untapped? Just because I haven't actually flexed those muscles does not mean they don't have the skills to do it.
Mm-hmm.
They got to want to do it, and they got to be shown that they have the skills to do it. Because chasing a number and being responsible for a quota or revenue is a whole different type of role. Right? So the company has to be responsible enough to make sure they're identifying that. What are the responsibilities? What are the skill sets and qualities? And how are you going to get some of these players to that position to deliver for you? And then the honest truth is, some of them may not have it. They may not have the skill. They may not want to do the role. And that's okay, right? I think that's where everyone just has to be very honest. And then, there are tons of customer success roles within the world and within different companies that could align very much towards, being very customer centric and not revenue centric, right?
Right.
But for some organizations, they have a responsibility to potentially overlap that. I think, everyone has a choice. And you have to be honest with yourself, and in some cases challenge yourself. Who knows? You may be really great at it.
Mm-hmm.
I know in my experience, we had a lot of great, talented people that really ended up really enjoying and didn't realize how well they would do in a revenue-based role.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's still a component of relationship management to it.
Sure.
But now there's revenue attached to it. But there's also then when it, there's more revenue potential for that employee as well when there's a revenue component to their role, right? So the opportunity to increase your income is also a huge benefit for that. But at the end of the day, I don't undervalue the concern, right? The concern is real, and people have a right to feel concerned about the fact that they want to hold on and maintain the part of the job that they love the most. Right. And every person has a right to be in a role that they love. Right. But at the
Yes.
end of the day, it's really critical that everybody understands the big picture and how to get there so that we can succeed and deliver for the customer. Right. So it's tricky. There's no one way of thinking about it. I think it's challenging yourself to look at it from all points of view and then making an informed decision. I think every employee, I used to share this 70-30 rule with my teams. And I used to say, look, on average, if 70% of the time I loved what I was doing, then I'm good. That was my benchmark. I was happy. I knew 30% of the time there were going to be things that I didn't love to do that maybe weren't in my wheelhouse, but were part of the role. And you have to establish an expectation and a benchmark for yourself. And there are going to be days where you're going to be happy 90% of the time or 80% of the time. And there are going to be days where you're not happy 80% or 90% of the time.
Yeah.
But on average, then you have full control of your career. You have control of your happiness. And it encompasses that, right? So I don't think there's an employee in the world that loves 100% of their job, right? You have to do things that you may not be comfortable in or may question, but that's a part of it. That's a part of it. But at the end of the day, you have the choice. And I used to always tell my team that at the end of the day, the choice is yours. Just make an informed decision.
I love that. I was writing down a few gems that you shared. And first of all, love that you said everyone has a right to be in a role they love. That one hit hard. I feel that's very true. Love the 70-30 rule. I think that's honestly probably just like good life advice in general. Relationships, whatever.
I'll be honest, that's the piece of advice where former members of my team will always like shoot me a note or will say, oh my gosh, I shared the 70-30 rule. My team, their team, they're like, that is the one piece of advice that I think comes full circle often within the thousands of people that I've worked with throughout the years. But it's an important one, right?
Yeah.
Like people want control. And people don't realize they actually have it. Right? You have control. You have control of happiness, you have control, but you have to establish what does that look like for you? What does that mean for you? And whether it's 60-40, 80-20, 70, but like establish that. And then, be open to the opportunities. Because like I said, there could be opportunities that become, available when companies start to restructure responsibilities. So, and then for some, there's going to be a percentage of people it just isn't going to work for. And again, that's okay. But it's not the company's responsibility to ensure you're happy 100% of the time.
Sure, of course.
The company's responsibility is to drive the growth of the company and to serve their employees and to serve their customers. But in doing that, sometimes decisions aren't always aligned, right? For everyone.
No, I love that ownership and empowerment that gives, and just clarity as far as establishing something as as clear as like a ratio as that. Um, Another thing that you said was that with transparency, while everybody wants it, it's just like the hottest word in marketing language when it comes to software: transparency, visibility, all these different things. But that comes with responsibility. And I'm curious, as teams are expanding their access to data, they're looking, I mean, just over my career, which isn't like that long, the amount of data that people want and think they need as far as like how to optimize whatever their OKRs are. I'm curious throughout your career what you've seen as far as that sort of hunger for data, and how much of it is this is a difficult question to ask. I guess what I'm really trying to get at is your perspective on how much is too much data? How can people curb that level of transparency that they're kind of like frothing at the mouth for? Because that probably eats into their ability to do other things in their job. So I'm curious, like, what your perspective on the growth and expansion of data and transparency around that in this particular role is, and yeah, just like your perspective on that.
I'm probably going to give you an unpopular answer.
You love it.
So I'm just disclaiming that.
Yeah.
Because we live in like you said, in a very data-centric world.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a believer in that, in the sense that you absolutely need to have data to help you make an informed decision without question. But you also need to have common sense. You also have to have experience. I think you also have to challenge and ask the questions, and have that level of, as a leader, have that level of responsibility to say, okay, it's not just about the data, because the abundance of data can paralyze you. And you could be stuck in a data world black hole, and where you should be using the data to make a decision, you end up using the data to paralyze you and not make a decisive decision. And I think that can really hurt a company, right? Or a business unit, when you are digging for the data to tell you a certain story that may not be there. So you can over engineer that. Again, I'm telling you right off the bat, that's not a popular answer. That is my answer. And I felt that I was able to be very successful in my career because of the fact that I applied various points of view into making a decision. And I didn't just, go off and just do it based on just specific data. You have to, you have to bring the team in, you have to have conversations, you have to understand the reasons behind some of the numbers.
Definitely.
So, everyone's got a different, and especially as a sales leader, that was a very unique point of view, because for most sales leaders, I would say traditionally, it's always about the numbers and only about the numbers. And again, I want to be clear, the numbers are critical to making an informed decision. But if you are just leaning on the numbers to tell you the entire story, I think you're depriving yourself from additional insights and creativity and innovation that could come from other components to make an informed decision beyond just the data.
Totally agree. I mean, that data doesn't have the experience and the wisdom and just like the intuition that you build over time that's required, as you said, to have that foresight or that element of creativity and innovation that you need to differentiate yourself or to just like come up with better solutions. So we definitely take the same approach at PSV and all the projects that we build, like Pano. And that's hard because you see the numbers, you see the data, but then you're just like, I just feel like there might be another way, based on our collective experience. There could just be a different way that isn't being proven by the numbers. And when you get strapped in and have those handcuffs and you're always chained to the data, it can be challenging. So I totally agree. While it might be, well, I don't know, like while it might be an unpopular opinion inside businesses, I would venture to say that a lot of people feel that way deep down, that they don't want to be controlled by those things. They want to be able to use their skill set and experience and ideas that come from their own inner creativity, and excitement around problem solving to come up with different ways. So I think somewhere in there, most people do feel that way. However, we have sort of collectively agreed that this is the way we're going to do things, which is being very data driven. So I'm curious to see how that evolves over time, especially in relationship building roles, like account management and whatnot. So speaking of, some of those skill sets, balancing the experience, the information, the data, like all these different things. It seems like you've really had an expansive career and taken that into chapter 3, which is starting your own company, Advance Forward Consulting. And I'd love to just hear a little bit more about what you're doing there and how that ties to your professional history up to this point. And what are some of the problems that you're helping teams solve?
Yeah, thank you, and great question. People always would ask me, how are you able to retain the talent that you have on your team?
Mm,
Why are our highest performing individuals being promoted in different components of the company and different roles of the company coming from your team? Like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? And I kind of had a reputation of building talent.
mhm,
And the reason for that is why I built this business. It was because no matter what the OKR was, what the KPI was, whatever this, the strategy was for us to achieve the growth that we needed, I knew the biggest way for us to get there, the most important way for us to get there is through our people. End of
mhm,
story, right?
mhm,
And there was a lot of dollars, rightly so, spent on the training of our sales teams, right?
mhm,
Sales process, how to sell the product, the services. Our training and enablement teams would, be very honed in on our sales teams, which were our sales reps, which was great, right? Then there was this whole trend for a while of, executive coach for the C-level execs, right? Like, how do we make them more people-centric? How do we help them, understand beyond the numbers and build cultures and the importance of, inclusivity, all of that, right? So DEI, I mean, now we have executive coaches working with our most senior C-level execs. Excellent, right?
mhm,
Huge.
mhm,
But mid-level management kind of got left out in the mix, right?
mhm,
Like, anywhere from just entering to become a manager, because most companies really promote, let's promote from within, which is fantastic, but are they ready? And do we
mm,
program? Do you have training and development? Are you investing in their preparation of becoming a manager, right? And in the tech world, that in the beginnings, right, that happened very quickly. With growth, you just kind of threw people, really high successful sales reps, into management roles, right? And now it's like, lead a team of 20. Teach them what you're doing, like help them be successful. So my purpose for building this business was to really provide a solution for organizations,
mhm,
for me to come in and help them invest in that leadership development for mid-level management, from
mhm,
managers, directors, senior directors to VPs. As everybody's focused on the numbers and the strategies, the fastest, best way to retain your high performers and to achieve growth is by investing in their leadership development.
mhm,
You can't just say, I need you to be a leader, without providing, a structure, an environment, an investment in them to become a leader, truly
mhm,
leader, not just manage people, but truly be leaders. And there are great companies out there that are very focused on it, and you could see their success.
Mm,
If you go and you look at who's on the list of the best places to work, when you start to read about those organizations and what they're doing, they're investing in their people. They're investing in the development of their people.
mhm,
People don't want to leave. I mean, the most alarming stats that every organization should be really, really focused on is studies show more than 50% of employees leave companies because of their managers,
mm, yeah.
right? And it takes up, I mean, it could cost a company a lot of money
Mhm,
to lose a high performing employee.
mhm,
It could be up to 200% of that individual's salary, because
mhm,
you have to think of estimated costs for recruiting, for interviewing, for lost productivity based on that individual leaving, who was either as a manager responsible for a team of 10, 20 people that was driving revenue, or employee or sales reps, right?
mhm,
Who were responsible for driving that revenue. So I'm helping kind of bring that to the forefront and kind of put a spotlight on that, and saying to organizations, let me help you
mhm,
within that challenge within your organization. If you want growth, if you want retention, you have to teach mid-level management how to achieve that.
mhm. I love that. I really do. I think what I've enjoyed most about these conversations with folks is that the good ones always say it comes back to the people. And it's amazing what can happen when you have that proper training, because I imagine there are so many willing, coachable managers out there, or potential managers out there, but they don't have the guidance internally. Everyone is busy doing their job, and so it's challenging to offer that in a way that is, I don't know, supportive and clear. Like, it's just very clear that if you have this framework, if you have this external support, that's amazing. I mean, I wish I had that when I was a manager internally. That would have been super helpful. And I think that reflects, your previous chapters in your career, as you said, in just like the evolution of starting in one place, having that skill set. When at chapter one of anyone's career is always going to be adrenaline rush, and just sort of learning all these different things, and then learning to apply. I really admire your story, and I'm excited to see what chapter 3 and on brings for you. And yeah, I think this is a really great place to conclude our conversation. So yeah, thank you so much, Jenny, for sharing your experience and your insight today. It's been really helpful, and I imagine our listeners and viewers will really appreciate the insight that you provided.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed the conversation, and thank you for bringing this topic to the forefront, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
think customer success is an important topic, and everything we discussed today were really important topics that I think can help organizations. So thank you for bringing that to the forefront.
Yeah, of course. I really enjoy it. So how can people find you and connect with you?
Yes, please. My website is advancedforwardconsulting.com. So please check it out. It gives great insights to what I'm doing and the companies and individuals that I've helped along the way. And also you can follow me on LinkedIn, Jenny Floros. I regularly post just insights, leadership insights, little tidbits of information along the way. So yeah, anyone who's interested in, leadership development, wanting to talk about it, wanting to see how, potentially I can help their organization, please reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenny.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.